environmental justice, collaborative problem solving, community development, capacity building. Not words a distressed community expects to hear when they are told there is an environmental pollution within their community. What at first can be devastating can in the long term be turned from a negative to a positive for a community. During the next 30 minutes, you're going to hear just how this change began to take place for communities within South Carolina using these terms. Their journey is really only at the beginning of a very long process. However, it's a story we felt compelled to tell. It's a story of how the state environmental regulatory agency, called the South Carolina Department of Health and Environmental Control, and the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, Region 4, took leaps of faith to bring about change for these communities. Throughout this documentary, you will hear how one small grant brought about a greater commitment, an earned trust, and better communication throughout this process. You will also see how these communities experienced hope and personal growth. This documentary will show you how faith can bring about change and some best practices and challenges along the way. It's our hope that you will use this video as a model when working with your communities.
In 2009, the South Carolina Department of Health and Environmental Control applied for monies from the United States Environmental Protection Agency's Office of Environmental Justice and were one of 5 state agencies that were awarded a cooperative agreement for a 3-year period. With this partnership, we wanted to replicate at the state level what had been formed by the Federal Interagency Work Group on Environmental Justice, a group who chose pilot communities to work with from across the nation. One of the pilots, located nearby in Spartanburg, South Carolina, was the Regenesis Project, led by Representative Harold Mitchell. These pilots built capacity within their organizations and communities, addressing environmental and social justice concerns or learning about and utilizing available federal resources. Likewise, South Carolina DHEC wanted to identify organizations and communities within South Carolina that could benefit from a similar partnership with state and federal agencies.
In 2010, 4 nonprofit organizations within environmental justice communities across South Carolina were chosen to be a part of this unique project called Leaders in Environmental Action Pilots, or LEAP. They were each awarded $25,000 over a 3-year period. These 4 nonprofits, located in different corners of the state, began their journey to build capacity and to work towards sustainability within their organizations and in the communities in which they represent. The organizations, A Place for Hope on Blackman Road in Rock Hill, the Community Development and Improvement Corporation in Graniteville, the Low Country Alliance for Model Communities in North Charleston, and the Imani Group in Aiken, focused on different communities confronting critical environmental, social, and economic challenges. Taking a leap of faith, EPA saw the value and importance of building capacity and selected this project to strengthen grassroots organizations around the state of South Carolina.
I think the reason why this one was most attractive and appealing to our headquarters office is because they could see that, one, the majority of the funds were not going towards staff. It was going to be put back into the communities, and that there was going to be an emphasis on not just one community within the state, but 4.
One of the most distinct elements of the LEAP project was the cooperative agreement between South Carolina DHEC and the EPA.
It gives the federal agency an opportunity to work with communities in a way that we typically don't, and it gives the communities an opportunity to interact with federal agencies in a way that they typically don't either.
The 4 pilots assessed the environmental justice concerns in their communities using the collaborative problem-solving model, which promotes collaboration among stakeholders such as community members, academic institutions, local government, and more.
When you look at the collaborative problem-solving process and you pull all of the partners together, basically they have the same end goal in mind, but it's just how do you get there? And you have to have those different pieces at the table. Local government cannot fix it by themselves. The community can't fix it by themselves. And it can only be done by all of those partners working together.
Well, I think one of the best partnerships they have cultivated is with DHEC. We have always kind of worked in the same areas in our region, but with this, they really focused in on the Graniteville area and the communities that are affected there. And for us as DHEC, that has been one of the areas we have spent a lot of time and attention with, especially since the train derailment in 2005.
What we've learned through this process, as well as our brownfields process directly with EPA, is that the relationship doesn't end when the grant does. And what I mean by that is EPA and DHEC have become fully vetted in what it is we're trying to accomplish here in Graniteville, and that has been proven to us through more than just the funding that we've received. The time, the effort, and the willingness to participate has been invaluable.
They were able to make some connections on the statewide level, and those both from a leadership role, but also what resources are available for them to use from state agencies, from other groups like the other LEAP pilots. You know, what were they doing that LAMPC might be able to incorporate? Or on the flip side, you know, what did LAMPC do well that maybe, you know, one of the other pilots hadn't thought of and could incorporate?
I've seen a lot of partnerships cultivate over the last 3 years, and the main one would be that each of these pilots, although at different levels in the spectrum about where they were with being organized and having other partnerships, the one thing that when we brought them together, we would bring them together once a year for a workshop, and it'd be at least 2-day workshop. And so we would bring them together, and the partnership among each other is what has cultivated the most, and that they want to continue after this to work together, and they want to form a South Carolina Environmental Justice Coalition of some sort where they can, for the state, so they can continue to work together to cultivate these relationships with other environmental justice communities across the state, and again, them be the models of how you can use a collaborative problem-solving methods to address your issues within your community.
Although each of the 4 pilots worked toward the same goals of sustainability and capacity building over the 3-year period, each organization tells a unique story.
One of the LAMPC goals was to implement the environmental piece, and under that overall environmental piece, we had various subsets. Okay, I guess you could call them objectives, you understand? Some of the objectives we had was to implement a grant that we had with the University of South Carolina and University of Maryland, which is an NIH grant. Well, that tied in directly, you understand, to the LAMPC goal for the environment. The LEAP grant helped us implement that.
The grant was sort of a dual purpose to help and empower the residents here to know how to help themselves, and to also try to exhaust every possible means of determining if there were alternate solutions to getting water and sewer into the neighborhood.
Our main goal with the LEAP project, we learned as we got involved, was very different than the majority of the other pilots because it was centered around community involvement. So our first concern was, how do we really capture that? How do we measure that? And what can we really expect to get from a community involvement project? So we set up a few tangible goals, and we've had quite a few intangible outcomes as a result. The first was to develop the Brownfields Community Oversight Team. That consists of CDIC and the GVW Community Investment Corporation nonprofit. And the goal for the Community Oversight Team was to monitor the progress of the brownfield assessment and cleanup in the community, and also look for ways and projects to redevelop and reuse those.
So our refocused direction and energy is now working on bringing those partners, not only that were a part of the LEAP pilot, those 4 organizations, but now to include an advocacy coalition from around the state of other environmental justice organizations, those that are interested, faith-based organizations, community and civic organizations that might be interested not just in environmental justice in and of itself, but also the education, the empowerment, but also the employment piece that comes with that.
Lasima Turman and Reverend Brendolyn Jenkins Bozeman each applied for the LEAP grant to promote capacity building and sustainability within their respective organizations, as well as to address environmental justice issues within the communities in which they represent.
We didn't know about the LEAP grant until we had a meeting with Louisiana Sanders, with the Graniteville Community Coalition, and they intended to apply, and once they went through the guidelines, they weren't able to, and they asked us to apply with them as a partner. And so we did, and we took that opportunity to further our development with what we had already identified as an issue, a big issue in the community, especially as it related to our Brownfields initiative, and that was community involvement. Louisiana and her organization have always kept us in the know of who didn't know what was going on and what the concerns of the community were, so we really took this as an opportunity to try to address that as best we could over the years with the LEAP grant.
We applied for the LEAP grant to be a part of the pilot program with EPA and DHEC so that we can increase our capacity as an organization, and it would afford us the opportunity to work with other like-minded organizations around the state of South Carolina.
South Carolina DHEC employees from different regions of the state also had a hand in some of these projects.
It was good for LAMC to participate because this was sort of a leadership role that they could share not only with their communities, but also with other communities in South Carolina and even nationally, because I don't think it was a story that had been being told. And so this whole idea of not only are we looking at, well, you know, are we impacting the wetlands here? Are we, how's the air quality? But, you know, what are the noise ramifications? What's happening? Are people going to be moving in? What's going to happen with the roadways? And so here, this community really got to be part of that process.
It was important for them to be a part of this process because they came to the table with the tools that was needed. They are organized well, they have good leadership with that organization, and with them coming to the table at this point, they could take what they were good at and use this grant and this opportunity to work with the community and really affect change in a good way and get the revitalization, the redevelopment that this area so much needs and deserves.
It was important for each organization to allow community residents to voice their environmental justice concerns so they could be a part of the LEAP process as well.
For those who are suffering from the aftermath of the train derailment and chlorine spill has caused them to have less affordable health care available to them. Also with the train wreck and spill, also the employment situation was impacted because of the shutdown of the mills that resulted from the spill as well. And so therefore there's a lack of employment, lack of jobs, and that has really impacted the economic development of the Graniteville, Vaucluse, Warrenville community.
A lot of issues they've had, we had no street lights. And a lot of times they had to walk out of here and all that, and nobody never got bit, but they see snakes in the road and stuff like that. But for the last about 6 weeks, we started waiting. When we voted in, it was talking about they want to try to get lights and stuff in here. For about the last 6 weeks, I guess we drummed on it pretty good. So the city is going to bring street lights from the end of the road out from Albright Road to right to the center right here. So they're going to put 6 lights in. That's a big improvement.
In addition to community members, each pilot had to consider the other stakeholders in their projects to gain every available perspective and keep everyone involved.
Some of those organizations and entities include the State Ports Authority, South Carolina DHEC, EPA, the City of North Charleston, South Carolina Department of Transportation. Also, we have on a local level our neighborhood presidents, the faith-based community, our churches, and also the public themselves. I would say the residents that consist in these LAMC neighborhoods. 2 additional stakeholders that I didn't mention, very important, providing technical assistance, was the University of South Carolina and the University of Maryland.
Other stakeholder groups that have been involved in this project, other than the agencies, EPA and South Carolina DHEC, have been organizations within the community. The Concerned Ministers Fellowship have been active with us. The local NAACP have been active. We've been active with a couple of the middle schools that we work with in our youth leadership program that we are incorporating environmental justice concerns with. So that is some of the outreach that we've already conducted and will continue to do.
One of the best examples of the cultivation of partnerships was the Low Country for Model Communities collaboration with the South Carolina Association of Community Development Corporations.
I'm working with LAMC on organizational development, so I have been through the LEAP grant and work with DHEC and Karen Sprayberry. I was asked to come to a board meeting of LAMC's and talk about some of the training that we are able to offer here at the association. They decided that they thought that was a good plan and contracted with us to do some organizational development. So we looked at board governance, policies and procedures, financial management, program management, community involvement, and then also looking at LAMC's a little bit unique with having the mitigation agreement and where they are with those resources and that mitigation plan, and how to kind of move from where they are to some real action steps and some real improvement to their communities.
From the beginning, the pilot organizations developed work plans detailing their goals and objectives, as well as how they intended to use the $25,000 grant over the 3-year period. Some are still working toward these goals, but each organization has made considerable headway.
We as an agency, A Place for Hope, we're not scientists and we're not engineers and we're not a government entity, so we can't design and own and monitor forever a wastewater system. So I think as far as did we succeed in getting water sewer into the neighborhood in this 3-year period? No, not yet. But we do know what some of the options are.
In answering your question, did we meet some objectives? Yes, I think we did. You understand, we under that particular environmental piece, we have been able to have what we call community-based participatory research workshops. We had workshops on what's called the goods movement, goods being things, items that are coming through the community, through the port, through rail, through trucks, and then making sure that these goods that are being moved through the community are not having a negative environmental impact on the community.
Successes are always accompanied by struggles. Community organizing is very difficult work, and there are always challenges to overcome. Recognizing there are problems, learning from and overcoming these challenges is what brings people closer together and what keeps people motivated to move forward.
The challenge was that this in essence was 5 projects versus, in the other regions, the project officer would just be managing one agency, which was the state agency. But because of the way we did it, not only did I have to work with the state agency, I also had to work with the other 4 grantees, which meant there were 5 people, 5 organizations to work with. So I wouldn't say that was a struggle. It's just increased the workload tremendously.
One of the biggest challenges we talked about a little bit, you understand, is board training. You understand, really understand what your responsibilities are. You know what I mean? Another big issue is capacity building. You know what I mean? Getting an executive director. I can't leave that out. You know what I mean? We need an executive director, big time, and we've already developed policy statement, policy and procedures for the director. We've got the description of services. We've worked with the City of North Charleston, working with Winetta, you understand, working with all these folks to try to get that in place. And just a lot of issues came up, you know what I mean? You know, how much money are you going to pay this person? Do you pay them Social Security and all this kind of stuff? How do you keep the records straight and all that? And if you don't have the capacity, you understand, it's senseless to get into that. So you're almost like in a catch-22, you know what I mean? You want to get it, but you can't do it because you don't have the capacity to do it, but you can't get the capacity until you get the executive director, so you're kind of chasing your tail almost. But I think we've kind of gotten ourselves in a better posture recently, you understand? I think we have a better direction in which we want to go in.
Challenges include, as I said earlier, the geography, which we really can't change. And the fact that there's a small number of people here. So funders want to spend money on an effort that will benefit a large number of people. I think another challenge is for the people who live here. They have had promises made to them for so long, and the promises were made in great faith, good faith, with all intention of being fulfilled, but the promises were made without knowing the facts. And once the facts became clear, like it's solid rock, or it's blackjack soil, it won't perk, or the lot's too small, we can't put a septic tank there. when the facts came out, the promises could not be kept.
Evaluation is a key component for any community-based organization. Each organization was asked to examine itself and its projects to see if they were effective. They recognized that success not only impacted the organizations, but many others within their communities.
Each community has been different about how we've evaluated their successes. I think I've looked at it, what their long-term result will be. I've looked at how they've used the monies and if they spent it well. I've looked at the partnerships they've formed along the way, the partnerships that we've formed with them, if they can better communicate within their community and how they're going about doing that now.
We've used a number of outcome measurements, communication, number of newsletters that have been released, number of stakeholders that we have expanded beyond the initial award of the grant. In addition to that, the number of sites that have been remediated in the community. Of course, most importantly, the number of volunteer hours and board hours that was spent, volunteer board and constituent hours that has spent working on the various projects in the community.
Numbers always count, and so when we conduct meetings, it's always that tension of nervous energy prior to the meeting, because you never know who's showing up. And so one way that we gauge it is actually by the number of people show up, whether we've done great outreach or not. Another way that we gauge and evaluate is the follow-up that communities have, whether they continue to question, whether they call us, whether they request more information.
I think through observation on the part of board members and staff and residents who see changes in the behaviors of people, who see changes in the physical condition of properties or the condition of the road, the lights.
Positive impact was the most important element of the LEAP project. By the end of the 3 years, each of the communities experienced some level of positive change, and each was strengthened by its involvement with this project.
So now I'd say it's up to about 80% now of residents is participating in stuff now. Because when we first got the wash house over there, most of them said they didn't want nothing to do with that place, bumping all that kind. You wouldn't get but like maybe about 2-3 people use it. Now practically the whole community uses it.
The impact that LEAP has done, it has brought awareness from the 2 VISTA volunteers and some of the board members on helping to get that information out on the 4 pillars that we used, which was some housing, economics, environmental, and education. I think they were instrumental in helping us when we first started to get those information out.
Some of the work that has been going on with the mills, we've noticed the cleanup, things that have been going on during the assessment period and the work that's been occurring around the mill area. Also, they've been doing some other things in the community. I've seen they had a community event down here, and that pulled interest from the community, so they'll know some of the things that's going on.
One of the main goals of the LEAP project was for these pilots to develop a plan for their communities and organizations to be sustainable in the future. Not an easy thing to do.
Sustainability for a nonprofit is the hardest thing. I mean, with the way that you're funded, grants are going by the wayside, corporate giving is down, so sustainability is a huge issue that everyone has to tackle. Unfortunately, it's not going to be done in the few sessions that I do have with LAMC. So we have encouraged them, and they did join the association because we continue to provide training and technical assistance to our members, and we hope that they stay involved with us through those opportunities. A lot of those trainings do focus on earned revenue, different strategies for fundraising, all of which would help Lansing stay sustainable going forward.
How do you sustain yourself? You're saying after the grant. How do we get funds coming in? You're saying to sustain ourselves as an organization. These are fundamental issues. I'm sure that every 501c3 experiences. You can't rely on grants alone. You're saying you have to have other sources of income to come on in to sustain yourself over a long period of time.
As the executive director of the Regenesis Project in Spartanburg, South Carolina, Representative Harold Mitchell has firsthand experience in leveraging resources for small nonprofit organizations that do not receive a lot of funding.
A lot of times I think most groups and organizations give up a little too quick and rely on just the grants itself. And in most cases, you know, when there's a grant process, there are going to only be so many grants that would go out. And you have to look exactly what you're trying to achieve. Many times we miss the boat by looking at some of the technical support that you can get from colleges and universities. And sometimes even the companies would have in their foundations something that addresses the exact same thing that you're applying for the grant. And in most cases, the technical support from the colleges and universities are a lot more as far as in value than what you would actually get in a grant.
Each of the pilot organizations has made headway when it comes to their goals and objectives, but there is more to be done. One thing is for sure, each organization has used this 3-year process as a learning experience, and the skills and resources they have taken away will be put to good use in the future.
I have grown a lot in 3 years as a result of participating in this program for a lot of reasons. One being people skills. I am a put me in a cubicle and hide me until I'm done kind of personality. I don't really like being engaged person to person. It was very difficult for me, but working with environmental justice community, you don't have any other choice. That is what you have to do if you want to be effective. This is not a project that you could be successful at from behind a desk or in front of a computer screen. I had to go out and I had to meet people and I had to talk to people and I had to find different ways and get very creative in communicating.
Personally, it may sound kind of trivial, but I think what I've learned most is about patience and the point of patience, but being persistent in that patience. One that I've learned is also the point on how that you're going to need much more people in partnership, and with those partnerships is being committed.
On a personal level, a lot of growth, personal growth, both in working with communities and neighborhood presidents and seeing firsthand what they go through on a daily basis. On a more professional level, the gratification of working with community groups and just achieving even small, minute goals as far as, you know, enhancing their redevelopment and their quality of life in these neighborhoods.
It was very helpful for me to learn and understand my job and what I could do here, having this grant going on and having the information that was available to me through the grant and having the residents' involvement to the level that it had gotten to through the grant. It's been wonderful to see the residents grow in their confidence and their ability to speak for themselves. And as far as the other part of just working here, the people are, you fall in love when you come here.
On the other side of the spectrum, the project managers from SCDHEC and the EPA also learned a great deal from going through this project and are able to give advice to those who may be in similar positions in the future.
I would say if someone is working on a project that extends across, several different organizations like this one did, is to, try to make sure that they understand the differences between each organization, that they really, get to know each group and their distinctions and their strengths and their weaknesses.
The advice I have for other people that are entering into this, it's not easy doing community work. Sometimes, like I said, you do feel alone. I've told other groups that I've spoken to that, you have to realize why you're in it. And, you have to believe that it is going to bring change to the community. You have to keep the faith.
During the third and final workshop with the pilots, Nancy Whittle, former DHEC Environmental Community Liaison, offered this closing remark from the 1968 sermon by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Everybody can be great, because everybody can serve. You don't have to have a college degree to serve. You don't have to make your subject and your verb agree to serve. You don't have to know about Plato and Aristotle to serve. You don't have to know Einstein's theory of relativity to serve. You don't have to know the second theory of thermodynamics and physics to serve. You only need a heart full of grace, a soul generated by love, and you can be that servant.